This is the Iron Strong Podcast, the #1 podcast to help you optimize your health through recovery, nutrition, performance, and mindset, where we bring on industry professionals in each one of these specific areas to help you maximize your performance as a human being.
Hey, everybody, it's Coach Guy.
And Dr. Luke Greenwell.
And you're listening to the Iron Strong Podcast.
It has been a while.
Yeah, it's been a little bit, huh?
You know, we've both been busy. Both been busy. Some fun things, hopefully on the horizon for the podcast.
For sure.
We wanted to just get something out there for you guys, let you know about a exciting mini series that we have coming up. Our pillars of optimizing your health through nutrition, performance, mindset, and recovery. We're going to do a little mini series on nutrition. Guy has been diving deep into a couple different topics, mainly the topic of fructose. And
metabolic.
Metabolic health, metabolic dysfunction.
A lot of metabolic dysfunction stuff.
And some of this information has come from various resources, but mainly like some of the guests on Peter Tia's show, Rick Johnson out of Colorado, University of Colorado, and his a lot of his research on fructose and the effects that it has on metabolism and just how it is such a disruptor. And we're going to get in that a little bit today. We're not going to go too deep into it because we want to make this little mini series. But I thought I would do a little bit of the intro for that. No guests.
Nope, just us.
So you gotta listen to us ramble.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna let Guy kind of take it from the start, talking about if you could give everyone a little bit of background of why people should be aware of what fructose. What is fructose, first off? Sure. And why we should be aware of it and how we take it in.
So thank you for that. That's I think it's a great, and this is the exact place to start, right? I mean, Luke actually introduced me to the Peter Tia podcast 3 months ago. And there were a couple of guests that were on his show, Dr. Inigo Milan, who is also out of the University of Colorado and has done some work with Rick Johnson out of the University of Colorado. And it was the episode that I listened to with Rick Johnson that got me started into a course through Peter Tia's group, as well as through Precision Nutrition on metabolic disease, metabolic dysfunction, which is unfortunately, a lot more common in this country than we realize. So, and where a lot of it starts is through added sugars, primarily fructose.
Right. So
fructose is actually a naturally occurring sugar. It is in fruit. So you think of fruit, fructose. So it's not, I think, let's make sure to define, it's not something that needs to be demonized, because we're not going to sit here and tell you not to eat fruit.
Yeah. No sugar, zero sugar diet.
Zero sugar diet, right? Like a naturally occurring sugar like fructose through fruit and some vegetables for that matter is actually healthy. Okay.
To a certain limit.
To a certain limit.
You don't want to eat 100 bananas.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So, but what we know about how much fructose is in fruit versus what is added to products, that's where things become, I guess that's where things get a little murky and where people become confused as to what ends up actually happening. Right. So it's important to note that fructose is actually naturally occurring in some fruits and vegetables. So we'll start with that. What has happened is that a lot of products, particularly things that are packaged or processed, have fructose added to them.
High fructose corn syrup.
Yeah. So United States is actually the only country
that allows
high fructose corn syrup, which is pretty terrible. Right?
I don't know why. Maybe there's something behind that.
I mean, something addictive to that.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Be canceled out.
Yeah. I don't want us to stop having a show. Yeah, so you'll probably, and if you look at labels, you'll see it on sodas, on juices. As a matter of fact, you're going to see it on cereals. You may see it on some breads. You're going to see it on crackers, cookies, things like that. In places where you wouldn't necessarily expect to see fructose added, it is an additive to a
Yeah.
lot of those products.
Could you also give some examples of some other added sugars? Because fructose just isn't the only
So
one.
dextrose
Dextrose
is another one. Sucrose is another one. Sucralose is another one that you'll see added to products. You'll see glucose.
Yeah.
They will flat out just add glucose to products. Maltodextrin, things like that and those are sugars that will get added to products in order to give them taste. I mean,
some of the artificial ones, sorbitol.
Exactly. Sorbitol is another one, because what companies know, and you and I have talked about this, is that carbohydrate, particularly in the highly processed form, is more addictive. So a recent study that just came out actually showed that if cocaine is considered to be at a 10% create a 10% addiction level, carbohydrates at an 8, alcohol is at a 5. So carbohydrates actually more addictive than alcohol.
Yeah.
Right. So let's be clear, like, companies understand this. This is not, this isn't me saying, hey, Coca-Cola, Pepsi, all you guys, shame on you, but they're in the business to make money. They know. They know what is addictive and what is not.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. The thing about fructose is that it's not just about the caloric component. So we think like, okay, but a lot of things have added sugar and a calorie is a calorie. So what? That's not the case with fructose. And what we've seen with fructose is that it has another layer to it that is pretty disruptive to our bodies. So our body produces ATP. It's how we create energy.
Our energy source.
For the
most part.
Right.
One of the energy.
One of our energy sources.
The main one.
The main one.
Yeah.
So we take in fuel, the body converts it to ATP, which provides us energy. When we take in fructose, aside from the caloric component, it begins to degrade our ATP. So it tears the ATP down, but worse yet, it makes it harder for our body to produce new ATP. So the byproducts of ATP, and I don't want to get too deep into this, but the byproducts of ATP, which our body needs to reproduce ATP, kind of get washed away. Fructose basically degrades those byproducts, and it makes us more difficult for us to produce ATP. So what does this mean? You may be thinking, okay, so what? Our body, and you and I have talked about this, our body has the survival pathway.
We are still based on our evolutionary traits that our ancestors from thousands, even hundreds of thousands of years of evolution have. The body has evolved for that, but the last 100 years, our society now has resources available to it that we don't need the DNA that we needed from our ancestors.
Exactly.
But we still have it.
Exactly. That's what you hit on it perfectly, because most of us don't live in food deserts. Most of us are not hunting our food. Most of us don't have to prepare for the winter in the way that prehistoric man had to, or maybe even the way people did 300, 400 years ago.
Hunter-gatherers following our food.
Yeah. Exactly. So we don't have to do that. But that pathway, when fructose enters the system and begins to attack our ATP, our body kicks our survival pathway in and says, okay, we need to store and conserve versus expend. So the body thinks, well, I'm preparing for a long winter here. Food is going to be scarce. I'm going to have to save energy, because if I expend it, I don't know how I'm going to replace it, right? So the body goes into that mode where it's going to store fat. It's going to store glycogen, which inevitably will be turned into fat. And it does not allow us to use our energy stores via the food that we take in a positive way. So what happens? We begin to gain weight. We begin to see that weight start to converge primarily around our organs. So we're talking about the visceral fat that is most dangerous to the body, because our body thinks, well, I don't know what's going to happen the next 3 months. I can't afford to expend a bunch of energy. So anytime I do expend energy. It's going to be for the purposes of finding more food. Therefore, I'm going to store everything that I'm taking in. I'm not going to expend any of it. And we gain weight.
Yeah.
I mean, that's,
and there's multiple other things that it does too, like the enzyme that breaks down fructose, it activates other pathways. Yeah, we're not going to necessarily get into that deep, because we just wanted to give you guys a start of the understanding of this, because it can get deep. And if you listen to Peter Attia's podcast with Rick Johnson, it is crazy in depth. But we wanted you to understand here that fructose is activating this, pathway that's in your genes. And it's saying, as an organism, it wants you to survive. So it's storing energy, right? And it's also preventing you from going into any sort of beta oxidation and breaking down that fat as well.
Right.
So it's like you're double storing, right?
And worse yet, it's your leptin, the enzyme leptin that kind of alerts your body that you're full. The fructose blunts it.
Yeah.
It blunts your leptin receptor. So your body actually doesn't, your brain, I should say, doesn't think you're full. So what we do instinctively is continue to eat well past the point of when we're actually full, because our body no longer senses that we're sated. Right. So
plus
we
the processed
to eat the processed food,
processed carbohydrate, or the additive sugars that have the addictive properties. It's like double kill, right?
Right.
So you have this leptin, this kill switch for you to eat is now not able to turn off.
Yep.
Plus you have addiction.
Yep.
Going on.
Right.
Right. So it's a recipe for disaster. And if you look at our population, especially in the United States, I mean, you can just look at this metabolic dysfunction and you can turn and say, exercise alone is going to get you there.
No.
Just eating healthy, like, what does that even mean?
Right.
Or do we need to really look at what is the underlying cause? And I think, and Dr. Johnson and some other guys, Dr. Perlmutter, there's a lot of people starting to, there's been so much going into the low carb,
right?
Let's take out sugars, but then there wasn't really an understanding of necessarily why,
right?
But now we know this pathway that exists, and then it's been around for a little bit, but you're starting to get stuff out to the mainstream. But you can now understand why. This is what I think the point we want to get to. Why, if you crush a cheeseburger, some French fries, and like you feel all right for a little bit, and then all of a sudden you're just sucked of energy, yep. Right? Yep. Or you're going to try to work out and you just pounded a bunch of carbohydrate, additive sugars, and you all of a sudden don't have energy, like it sucks it fast, right?
Right.
And I think you could talk to about the endurance athletes that they're always sucking down goo.
Yeah.
And like they just feel like they just need that continuous amount because the crash is heavy.
So that's a great point, where endurance athletes begin to go through this, this whole phase of, well, I just need more glycogen. Right? So we're ready to slam a gel, or you're ready to, eat more carbohydrate or get as much carbohydrate in as you can. The problem is that all it's going to do is continue this cycle of your roller coaster. You go up, down, up, down. And so, and the majority of the carbohydrates that are consumed are simple sugars. And those simple sugars are designed specifically to give a brief bump in energy
of glucose,
of glucose,
yeah.
But it's nothing that's going to be sustained. Yeah. So it's something that's going to sustain you an hour or 2 hours, right? So your body is, and what's interesting too, is that even for people who are maybe only working out for an hour at a time, if they're taking in a bunch of carbohydrate in, let's say, a 60 to a 90-minute period, their body is going to tell them we need more, even though they don't post-exercise, right? So what ends up happening is that, you see endurance athletes consuming gels or chews, or the sports beans and the drinks, which are
we're talking about the drink as taking it as a liquid,
right?
Second,
in that liquid form. So they take that in during training, but what they do post-exercise ends up becoming worse, because the body continues to think, well, I still need more carbohydrate because
Right.
it was pumped all this simple sugar. So it wants more. The body's telling your brain is telling you, I need more simple sugar. So you'll see a lot of athletes talk about, I'm so hungry, I'm after a workout, I'm starving, my energy level is here. And so instead of paying attention to how much sugar is consumed during and post exercise, more just continues to go in.
Just flow in. Yeah.
And typically what you'll see, which I think is kind of fascinating too, companies got smart and put caffeine in some of these products as well, right?
Another addictive substance.
Right. And so it's like, oh, well, the caffeine's going to help me continue to perform longer at a higher effort, but it's not going to do anything in terms of the sating side. So you're still going to be getting this sensation of hunger and this sensation of kind of bombing out from an energy standpoint.
Yeah. Yeah. They can, and you'll look at them and you'll say, well, they're not, I don't see any fat cyclists. You know what I mean? Like,
I don't see anybody in the Pro Tour who's fat.
Right.
Yeah.
So they're not necessarily able to store fat, but they're because their calorie expenditure is so high.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, would you say that resting metabolic rate is
ridiculous.
Is massive.
Yeah. I mean,
so they are burning calories very quickly.
I think the problem that endurance athletes in general,
but we talked about how when they stop, they're done.
Right. They're done. Right. I mean, endurance athletes in general have this problem. Like, we get wrapped into what's the coolest thing the top pros are doing. And what we're not paying attention to is what their energy demands are versus what our energy demands are.
Right.
Okay. It's not the same. A Tour de France rider is expending up to 3,500 calories of carbohydrate a day during the tour, right? The average rider loses 10 pounds during the 21 days. We're not going to do that.
No.
That's just not going to happen to us. Your average, I mean, I shouldn't say your average, but your top pro triathletes who actually pay a lot more attention to the nutrition than was the case maybe 10 years ago, you're finding that the way that they fuel is also different. Right. But you and I talk about, if you're going to go for a 90-minute ride and you're going to suck down a 600 calorie carbohydrate gel because the Tour de France winner uses it, no, it's not an apples to apples comparison. And I think that's where we get way too hung up.
Yeah. I mean, that could be said with a lot of things. Like, I remember when it came out, like The Rock was eating 21 salmon. There's like
something ridiculous. Right? Yeah.
If I did that, it would be so dumb.
You'd be sick.
I'd be sick. I mean, I don't have enough protein. Like, I don't have enough muscle mass to justify that.
Yeah.
You don't have enough. If you're looking at a cyclist, you don't have enough energy expenditure to justify that intake of glucose.
No.
All you're going to get is the crash, and possibly the fat storage. Like, and that's
because when the crash happens, our body again kicks on the survival pathway, and the hunger kicks in, and that's why we continue to keep eating, and it starts to tell the body store.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating because you see endurance athletes who bonk a lot. What ends up happening is they gain weight. So they are consistently triggering that survival pathway every time they go to hyperglycemia.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense. Just it's something that opened my eyes as far as like looking at the label now, looking at what's in my food, and something I've done in the past, but now also knowing like, okay, this is the pathway. This is what happens when I take it in. This is why I feel like this when I eat, whatever it is.
Right.
And I mean, it's like everything else, right? You're not going to totally eliminate every added sugar for the rest of your life. I mean, if you do that, more power to you, right? But like, just know if you combo a bunch of carbohydrates on top of each other, whether that's potatoes, fries, those simple starches that people don't think about. Oh, well, I'm just eating a potato. Well, actually, no, that's, that's
you're slamming
some
high carb.
Yeah. So, this is going to be a shorter podcast for us, but we wanted to bring this subject on because, it's one that we've touched on within other podcasts in the past. But it's never one where we've had the true background and research behind to support, what we're talking about, and also helping you understand these changes that you can make quickly that could have a real effect on your just health span as you continue to age, and might change the way you actually train and consume your fuel for training.
Yeah.
Hopefully it does, because I think, Guy's been on his own personal journey of trying to get a little more fat adaptive so that he doesn't have to rely on carbohydrate fuel. I mean, what is your take on how you felt through this journey?
I'm enjoying it quite a bit. I mean, initially it was a little, the first week was a little challenging, but the deeper I've got, I'm in week 9, and I mean, I'm enjoying it. I really am. I'm noticing a difference in terms of how I fuel, how I feel. I think the mental clarity part of it has been really huge. I really enjoyed that. And you kind of find that groove where things feel better. Things begin to line up easier in terms of prepping your meals, timing your meals, things like that. So no, I'm really liking it. I mean, being able to add intensity back into training has been good, and I haven't experienced any ill effects of that. So I like it. And I don't have the crash. I don't finish a long workout and crave a bunch of carbohydrate. I don't crave carbohydrate at night. Right. And that's big. Like, I don't find myself at night, like hunting down something so
to crush.
Yeah. And that's been huge.
I mean, that's freeing, right? Like to have some control over that, because I think at times when I've gone up and down, like if I've been on one of those where like, I don't care. I'm skinnier guy. I can get away with carbohydrate intake, but like the hunger wraps me. And I think that is the whole leptin effect, where it's like, I no longer have much suppression of what I can eat. So let me find something at night that I'm going to just take down. Well, guess what? That's going to, go into that whole cascade overnight when I'm sleeping. So I think it's cool that you can now see 9 weeks in, you have control over what you need to take in for fuel.
Yeah.
And that's awesome.
It gives me a better understanding too, I think what gave me a better understanding in terms of people who are in that, like, suffering from metabolic disease, whether it's insulin resistance or type 2 diabetes, you begin to understand that it's not a case of willpower or determination. This is the body's response when we stick on a certain path, right? And so the body goes this way because it's part of us. It's built into us. Yeah. So you're kind of fighting nature.
Yeah. Good luck.
Yeah. Right.
Good luck.
So it's been pretty fascinating that in that regard. So I've enjoyed it.
Well, hopefully this little first intro podcast on this little nutrition mini series is going to be good for you guys. I think some of these next episodes we're going to talk about, additionally some of the pathways that's involved with this whole fructose intake. Specifically, we'll probably touch base a little more on the insulin response next episode, but also, like, I think tangible steps that you can take to maybe change just some of your habits a little bit, that can help you kind of fight your evolution, right? Fight your genes. So we appreciate you guys hopping in and listening to this episode. We're excited to get episodes going again. We're going to start having guests back on probably sometime in April, and we look forward to continue to bring you guys hopefully valuable, great content that you guys can use to optimize your health.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm very excited about this series and what we got next.
All right, guys, we will catch you next time.
Thanks, guys. Hey, everyone. Thanks so much for listening to today's episode. We really do appreciate it. We wanted to remind you of our sponsors, the people that help us keep going, starting with Metadyne. Metadyne's a company that has partnered with people like Adiday, ProStretch, Thule's, and Chopat to provide products that help you keep moving. And the code for 25% off for our listeners is Iron Strong, all caps, all one word. So IRONSTRONG. We also want to remind you of Fuerza Coffee, a ethically sustainable coffee that is empowering female growers. And the code for Fuerza is GUYROCKS, GUYROCKS, all one word, and that's all caps as well. Also wanted to remind you about Noon tablets, because water is simply not enough when it comes to your daily hydration. The code for Noon is IronStrong20, that's IRONSTRONG 20, and SunDried, an ethically sustainable apparel company that we have partnered with and love their gear when it comes to all things working out and all things post-working out. And the sun-dried code is GUY944. Don't forget to please join our Facebook group if you haven't already. And feel free to share our episodes and encourage others to become part of the group as well. Thanks again.